All right, I'm just going to get this started because doing all the other stuff is too much. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Life with Tyra Eiland, and it's an acronym. It's Lessons of Inspiration in Full Evolution. It's my lessons, not yours. Hopefully you're learning in the midst. Get how this goes? Let's get to it. So, one thing that I think is extremely important. I'm not about to say anything deep. I just need to make sure my hair doesn't get any makeup on it. Let's pull these back and pop them out the way so that I can do my makeup. So one thing I've realized in my youthful years of being on this earth, and that has come more recently, is the importance of operating in my overflow. My overflow, not my empty cup, not someone else's cup, but my overflow. And so as I reflected on that and really sat in what that means and that revelation, I realized to operate fully in my own overflow and in my own truth, I had to look back at my life. How many of you all have looked back at your life? Where you've been, who you were, the community and the influences you kept, the advice you did or didn't take, and ultimately how your actions landed you where you are today, good or bad. You'll begin to learn that I don't really like the concept of good or bad because it's subjective. It's good when it works in our favor and it's bad when it works against us. Not really cool with that concept. So I throw it out every once in a while. But in looking back in your life, you realize that self-acceptance is a huge part of this journey. Because if you don't accept yourself and you don't love yourself and you don't like where you've come from or who you were in the past, why would anyone else? Our relationships, who we become, the things we allow in our life, the way people treat us and our relationships all stem from this aspect of self-acceptance. Because if you know your worth and you know who you are you going to accept less? But if you have a bit of insecurity on who you were and what you used to be, you'll accept whatever because you feel ultimately that you aren't worthy. And I'm here to tell you are. And the trick is to heal from those things that you feel that you're not worthy of. So as blessings begin to overflow in your life, you can fully receive them. And as people come into your life for assistance and wisdom from your past, you're able to be present enough to assist them. And I know that sounds easy, but boy, oh boy, is it a journey. Because I have to accept everything that I have become and accept everything that I need to unbecome, aka unlearn. The hindrances, what I thought was working for me was really working against me and ultimately was survival mode. But how many of us own that and realize that? I'm just saying. As my makeup bag tries to spill out. Here are my lessons in terms of looking back. The 3 things that you should do in order to begin, this ain't the full picture, to begin to walk in self-acceptance. Number 1 is stop concealing the things in which you want to hide. Stop concealing the things in which you want to hide. You have to release the things that you're ashamed of, that you have guilt, in order to thrive and move forward. I love makeup. I can't say I love it. I have a hate-love relationship with it. But I realize that in putting on makeup, it allows me to hide some of the blemishes in which exist that you may not even see, only I see. But I've learned to also love those blemishes and those scars. There was a scar that came from here to here when I was a child. I lived in Chicago, Illinois, staying with my grandmother, and I had this big girl on the block attitude. I don't know why. Maybe because who my family is and how big they are and how many of us it is. But I just wanted to show everyone, you can't mess with me, the little light-skinned girl on the block. And I would always get into these fights. And I remember getting into a fight, and I actually got a black eye. Her name was Jerry. If I was at the point 5 feet, she was 5'6", tall and skinny, and she had long arms. We were playing double dutch, and I wasn't really good at double dutch, but I wanted to be. My cousins were so talented at it. It was like the fun thing to do back then. And of course, she was talking stuff. I'm not that good. Why they turning? Yada, 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 right? I had to be like in 4th grade, maybe, going into the 5th. And she was talking so much, and I was like, who you think you talking to? And I start blah, 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 popping off at the mouth. And before she said, so you want to fight? And I looked like, duh. And before I could even step to her, her long arm, whoosh, black eye. My cousin, he saw this. He was like 2 houses down, and he ran up. And that's a whole nother story. I'm not admitting to a crime on this camera, but just use your imagination, right? And so I go in the house and I'm talking to my grandmother, and she's like, you need to stop all that fighting out here. Because at that point, I had gotten into a few fights in this one summer. It was a girl down the street. And I mean, girls I didn't even know, who wasn't even on our block. I was starting to fight a lot. And so I made a promise to my grandmother that I was done fighting. There was no need to fight. What was I fighting for in the first place, right? And I made that promise prematurely. And so something happened later on that summer, and I got into another altercation. This girl did not know how to fight, and I was aware. And that's why I wanted to fight her, because I needed to one-up myself from that black eye that had just happened. And I needed the confidence booster. And so because she and I both knew, because we were good friends and our families were good friends, knew that she couldn't fight. When I punched her, I kept pushing her. She didn't fight back. When I punched her, then she was forced to engage. And in engaging, she scratched my face because she knew that would make me stop. And so I had a long cut right here. And I was trying to hide it from my grandmother. And grandmothers are wise. As I see, I missed a spot. She saw that I missed a spot. And I was going to get some food. And she stopped me in the hallway. And she said, what's that on your face? I think I said something like I fell. And she said, come here, let me look at that. You ain't doggone no fell. You been out there fighting, haven't you? And of course, I started crying. I was like, yes. And she was like, I told you about that. And then she went and got some medicine, aka cocoa butter, so that it could heal up and start to become invisible so the healing can begin. And I tell that story to say, I tried to cover that scar up. And makeup was not something I was using at that time, but I tried the best I could with hoodies, turning the opposite way, all that I could think of at that young age. And it worked for a time. And then the truth came to be. I was out there fighting. And so some of you haven't released your pain, and you've been trying to hide it, whether with makeup or avoidance, ignoring, pushing it off. And at some point, it comes to light, whether it's through your actions, through someone else's words, or through your own words. And so to operate in the overflow, you have to be completely free from the things that haunt you. And the first step is releasing those things. The next step, as my grandmother spoke to me about fighting, I understood what she was trying to say. Fighting can lead to so many other things. I'm just thinking about, my emotions and where I stand. And she like, it's bigger than you. Because Also, in the fight before that she had known about with the black eye, obviously my cousin getting involved escalated it a little bit because she has brothers, or had, I don't know where she is right now, but back then she had brothers. And so just imagine my male cousin jumping in on this all-girl thing, what that'll escalate to on the west side of Chicago. And so in the midst of really receiving your revelation, you have to understand how it has impacted you and how it has impacted others, and begin to correct that and be okay with it and acknowledge it, right? And if other people don't want to acknowledge it, hey, that's on them. So that's step 2. Receive the revelations. Look for the good in the midst of all that is happening. And most importantly, step 3, try to keep it easy. You have to revise the narrative. What you have told yourself for so long. And so in the midst of me always fighting, I just had a lot of anger issues. I just wanted to be seen in a way that I hadn't been seen. I wanted to be respected in a way I hadn't been respected. Now, I could put those words to principle today. Back then, I couldn't. And that's okay. So giving myself grace for being the fighter that I used to be and understanding why I wanted to fight in the first place. A lack of confidence, lack of support, very territorial. I don't know where that came from at such a young age. But life reveals itself. And so I revised a narrative that the lesson being learned is how my actions will impact others. And I have to be aware, which number 2 comes into play again, how that experience with fighting and the impact of others has impacted my today and my emotional response to certain things. And so do you. And so my call to action, the lesson of full evolution with me, is that you have to pay attention to your life. You have to write it down, and you have to be mindful of who you're becoming and who you were in the past, how they align, and also how the things in which you aren't too proud about don't define you. Because in doing that, you're free. And in being free, you're able to fully operate and help someone else who's been in those same shoes because you've done the work. Without doing the work, how can you help the next person? How can you raise your children? Assuming that many of you have some type of influence in a child's life, even if you're not a mom, how can you be present in your family's life fully? And how can you become who you're ultimately supposed to be if you're stuck in the past because you haven't accepted who you are, who you've been, and who you're going to be? That's just my tidbit as I do my makeup. How I look, y'all. There are so many lessons in life. And my goal with the Life with Tyra is to help you navigate some of the things in which you're just replaying in your head. Because the lessons I've learned can help you get to where you need to go. Lessons of inspiration for full evolution. That's the goal. Always and forever. Until next time.